The high desert wind carried the scrape of metal on stone before Sam Bridger saw her. Midnight, and his fence line shimmered under a bone-white moon. He rode closer, rifle across his lap, and found an Apache woman on her knees, digging. 4 feet down already, her hands bled, nails black with dirt. A horseshoe lay in the dust beside her saddlebag. Fallen, forgotten. She didn't run, just looked up at him, braids undone, eyes flat with exhaustion. "There is water here," she said in clear English. "Sacred water beneath your fence. I need it." By morning, the whole town knew. The preacher's wife stood on the mercantile steps, pointing like Sam had brought plague itself onto his land. "Vagrant Indian," she spat. "Territorial marshal will haul her off if you don't turn her over, Bridger." Sam stood silent, hat in his hands as the crowd pressed closer. Then Nayland stepped forward. "I will pay him," she said, voice steady, "with my body and my labor." The crowd gasped. Sam's face burned. Sam fed the mule team alone that morning, muttering numbers under his breath. 8 months. 240 days to prove this homestead, or the land office, would auction it to the highest bidder. He'd already plowed 6 of the required 10 acres, built the cabin, lived here 5 straight years. But the law didn't care about effort. It cared about paper. The mules, Sal and Gideon, nosed his pockets for dried corn. He gave them each a handful. His knuckles scraped raw from yesterday's fence repair. The wind smelled of juniper smoke from his banked fire and the alkaline dust that never quite settled. He heard the porch boards creak. She was still there. Nayland sat against the cabin wall, knees drawn up. The wool blanket he'd thrown at her last night pulled tight around her shoulders. She watched him with that same exhausted flatness, like a woman who'd stopped expecting kindness but couldn't quite give up on survival. Sam walked past her and into the cabin, poured 2 tin cups of coffee from the pot on the stove, came back out, and set one beside her. He sat on the top step, back to her, staring at his fence line. "You can't stay," he said. She said nothing. The coffee steamed between them. "Town will make trouble. For you and for me." "I know." He turned. She was drinking the coffee, both hands wrapped around the cup like it was January instead of October. Her fingernails were split, bloody crescents. "What were you digging for?" he asked. "Truth, now." She met his eyes. "I told you. Water. There is a spring beneath your land. My grandmother showed me when I was small. Before the fences. My well's 60 yards that direction," Sam said, jerking his chin toward the stone-ringed hole near the barn. "Got all the water I need." "Not for long." He stiffened. "What's that mean?" Nayland set the cup down. "The rains did not come this year. Your well will run dry by spring. The sacred spring—" She pointed at the spot she'd been digging. "It runs deeper, fed by the mountains. It will not fail." Sam studied her. She wasn't lying. Her voice carried the certainty of someone who'd watched land longer than he'd been alive. "Even if that's true," he said slowly, "I can't have you digging up my property. And I sure as hell can't have the whole town thinking I'm harboring you." "Then marry me." The words hung in the cool morning air like gun smoke. Sam's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. "What?" Nellen stood, letting the blanket fall. She was small, thin as a willow switch, but she stood straight. "You need hands to prove this land. I can work. I can plow, mend fence, harvest. You need a woman's presence to show the land office this is a real home, not just a bachelor claim." That's not how—" "And I," she continued, her voice cutting through his protest, "need a white man's name and a white man's child." Sam set the cup down hard. Coffee slopped onto the porch boards. "Now hold on." She stepped closer. Close enough, he could smell the wild sage she'd tucked into her braid, the dust on her skin, the faint copper scent of her bleeding hands. "My grandmother is dying," Nayland said. "She is the last elder of our line. Under tribal law, our family's ancestral claim passes to the next generation, but only if there is a next generation. I must bear a child within 1 year, or the land goes to the United States government, forever." Sam's throat went dry. "You've got kin, surely someone—" "I had 3 babies." Her voice didn't waver, but her eyes did, just a flicker. "All born too early. All died before they took breath. The people say I am cursed. No Apache man will marry me. But a white child, born under white law, with a white father's name, that child can inherit under both laws, tribal and federal." She looked at his cabin, his fence, his struggling vegetable patch where Rebecca's garden used to grow. "You need labor to prove this land in 8 months," she said. "I need legal protection to bear a living child in 12. We help each other. When my year is done, when your proving is finished, we go our separate ways. No debt, no promises beyond the work." Sam stood, his legs unsteady. He was a man who'd buried his wife and unborn daughter 6 years ago, a man who'd sworn he'd never marry again, never risk that kind of loss. And here was a woman offering him exactly what he'd spent those 6 years building. A transaction. Clean. Practical. Bloodless. I don't... He stopped, rubbed his face. This is insane. Yes. The town will crucify us. Yes. And you... He couldn't say it. The idea of touching another woman, of lying with her, of watching her belly swell the way Rebecca's had, the idea of losing another child. Nolan seemed to read it in his face. I do not ask you to love me, Samuel Bridger. I ask you to survive with me. His name in her mouth sounded strange, formal, like a contract clause. He looked at his hands. Scarred, calloused, the left one still carrying the rope burn from last week's fence work. He thought of the land office deadline, the empty cabin, the well that, if she was right, would run dry by spring. If I say yes, he said quietly, it's a business arrangement. You work the land. I provide the name and what you need, but you get your own space, your own room. I won't force anything. I do not want force, Nolan said. I want a choice. Sam's hand trembled as he reached for his coffee cup. He drained it, cold and bitter. All right, he whispered. All right. Nayland nodded once, sharp and final. Then she bent, picked up the horseshoe from the dirt where it had lain all night, and held it out to him. Journey ends here? She asked. Sam took the horseshoe. The iron was cold and heavy in his palm. Reckon it does, he said. But when he looked up, she was already walking toward the barn, rolling up her sleeves. He had no idea what he'd just agreed to. The mercantile smelled of lye soap and cotton bolts stacked to the rafters. Sam pushed open the door, the bell overhead jangling sharp in the afternoon heat. 3 women stood by the counter, the preacher's wife, her sister, and old Mrs. Calloway from the boarding house. All 3 stopped talking the moment he entered. Nolan followed 2 steps behind, her eyes fixed on the floorboards. Mrs. Webb, the owner, looked up from her ledger. She was a widow herself, gray-haired and straight-backed, with eyes that missed nothing. She nodded at Sam. Mr. Bridger? Ma'am. Sam pulled his hat off. Need to buy some fabric. Cotton, if you've got it, and thread. The preacher's wife, Martha Henley, made a sound in her throat like she'd swallowed a wasp. Fabric? For what purpose, Mr. Bridger? Sam felt the back of his neck heat up. For a dress, ma'am. Dress. Martha's voice could have stripped paint. For her? For my wife. The word dropped like a stone into still water. The ripples went out in silence. Mrs. Calloway clutched her handbag. The sister took a step back. Martha's face went pale, then red, then pale again. Your wife, Martha repeated slowly. You married this heathen? Before a justice of the peace in Santa Fe, Sam lied. They'd be going tomorrow. He'd already checked the schedule for the circuit judge, but the lie bought them time. Legal and proper. There is nothing proper, Martha hissed, about a Christian man lying with a savage. Reverend Henley says marriage to a heathen isn't marriage in God's eyes. It's fornication. It's sin. Nayland's hand found the counter edge. Her knuckles went white, but she didn't speak. Sam stepped forward. Then I'll answer to God, ma'am, not to the Reverend. Mrs. Webb moved between them, her voice calm as Sunday morning. The fabric's 4 cents a yard, Mr. Bridger. How much do you need? 6 yards. Sam pulled coins from his pocket, set them on the counter. And I'll take it on credit if the cash don't cover it. Mrs. Webb's eyes flicked to Nayland, then back to Sam. Something shifted in her expression. A softness, maybe recognition. Cash covers it fine. I'll throw in the thread for free. Martha's mouth opened, but Mrs. Webb raised a hand. My store, Martha. My rules. The 3 women left in a hurricane of skirts and outrage. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the jars of penny candy. Mrs. Webb pulled down a bolt of pale blue cotton, began measuring. You know what you've done, don't you, Mr. Bridger? Yes, ma'am. Town won't forgive this easy. I know. She cut the fabric with sharp, clean strokes, folded it, wrapped it in brown paper. When she handed it across, her fingers lingered on his for just a moment. My husband was a good man, she said quietly. Died owing money to the wrong people. I know what it's like when the world decides you don't deserve mercy. She looked at Nolan. You take care of him, girl. He's one of the few decent ones left. Nayland's voice was soft but clear. Yes, ma'am. Outside, Sam tucked the package under his arm and untied his horse from the rail. Nolan stood beside the mule he'd lent her, one hand on the animal's neck. They hate me, she said. They hate what they don't understand. Is there a difference? Sam had no answer for that. They rode in silence back through town, past the church where Reverend Henley stood on the steps watching them with eyes like judgment itself, past the saloon where men stopped their conversations to stare, past the land office with its painted sign, homesteads, claims, deeds. Sam's stomach twisted. The land office. He pulled his horse to a stop. I need to check something, he said. You head back. I'll be along. Nellian looked at the land office, then at him. You are afraid. And just need to check the records. Make sure the proving deadline's what I think it is. She didn't argue. Just turned the mule toward home. The land office was dim and cool, smelling of old paper and ink. Horace Cutler sat behind the desk, a man built like a barrel with a face that smiled too much. He looked up when Sam entered, and his smile widened. Bridger, heard the news. Congratulations on your marriage. The way he said marriage made it sound like a disease. Need to confirm my proving deadline, Sam said. Got it written down as April 1st. April 1st. That's right. Cutler pulled a ledger from the shelf, flipped it open. His finger traced down the column. 160 acres, 5-year proving period. You've got 8 months left. Assuming you meet the requirements. 10 acres under cultivation, permanent dwelling, continuous residence. I will. Good, good. Cutler closed the ledger. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a different folder. Though there is one small matter we should discuss. Sam's gut tightened. Cutler pulled out a piece of paper, slid it across the desk. Your equipment loan, $240 for the plow and the mule team purchased 3 years ago from the Miller Ranch. I've been making payments. You have, very diligently. Cutler's smile didn't reach his eyes. Problem is, Miller sold me that note last month. I own your debt now, Bridger, and I've reviewed the terms. Sam's hand curled into a fist on the desk edge. Cutler turned the paper so Sam could read it. Says here the loan comes due in full upon any change in marital status. It's a standard clause. Prevents men from hiding assets in a wife's name to dodge creditors. I'm not hiding anything. Maybe not, but the clause is clear. Cutler pulled out a pen, made a note in his ledger. $240 plus 36 months of accumulated interest at 40% per annum. 40%? Sam's voice cracked. That's illegal under the Homestead Act. Is it? Cutler's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. Well, I'm just a simple banker, Bridger. If you want to dispute it, you're welcome to hire a lawyer. Until then, the total comes to $480. Due at harvest time. 6 months. And the room tilted. $480. Sam made maybe $200 in a good year. I can't pay that. No, Cutler agreed pleasantly. You can't. He leaned back in his chair. But here's the thing about Indian wives, Bridger. Under territorial law, they can't co-sign homestead claims. Can't be listed as legal partners in agricultural enterprises, which means you're still proving that land alone. Without her labor, counting toward your residency requirement. Sam's mouth went dry. I'm saying your marriage doesn't help you one bit with the land office. In fact, Cutler pulled out another document, stamped with an official seal. It complicates things. See, I did some checking. Your wife? She's listed as a vagrant in the Apache census. No reservation status. No legal residency, which means harboring her could be considered obstruction of federal Indian policy. He slid the foreclosure notice across the desk. The ink was still wet. Sign over the water rights to that spring you've got, Cutler said, his voice going soft and dangerous. Sign them over to me and I'll forgive the debt. You can keep the land, keep your squaw. Everyone walks away happy. Sam stared at the paper, at the blank line waiting for his signature. And if I don't? Cutler's smile was a blade. Then I seize the mule team tomorrow for non-payment. You lose your equipment, you can't finish proving the land. You default, I foreclose. And your pretty little Indian wife? She gets deported back to the San Carlos reservation. If she makes it that far. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Sam's hand trembled over the foreclosure notice. Outside, a horse whinnied. Somewhere, a dog barked. The clock on Cutler's wall ticked like a countdown. I need time to think, Sam said, his voice hollow. You've got until tomorrow noon. Cutler stood, buttoned his coat. But Bridger, you should know, I've already got buyers lined up for that water. Union Pacific's paying $10,000 for rights to springs along the proposed rail line. Your little homestead's sitting on a fortune. And you're about to lose it over a woman who can't even sign her own name? Sam walked out into the brutal sunlight, the foreclosure notice burning in his pocket. Behind him, Cutler's laughter followed him all the way to his horse. Sam didn't go home. He rode west instead, past the edge of his property line, into the scrub oak and juniper that marked the wild country. He needed to think, needed to breathe air that didn't smell like Cutler's cigar smoke and lies. The sun was dropping toward the mesas when he finally turned back. Nolan was in the yard, bent over Rebecca's old garden patch, the one that hadn't grown anything but weeds for 6 years. She had a hoe in her hands, turning the hard-packed earth. Sam dismounted, tied his horse. That soil's dead. Been trying to work it since Rebecca... He stopped. Since my wife died. Nayland didn't look up. The soil is not dead. It is tired. You took from it without giving back. She pointed to a pile of dried grass and kitchen scraps at the edge of the plot. This will feed it. Make it strong again. That's just trash. No, it is food becoming soil, soil becoming food, the circle. She straightened, wiped sweat from her forehead. My people know this. Your people forget. And Sam watched her work. Her movements were efficient, practiced. She wasn't just digging, she was reading the land, feeling for something he couldn't see. I went to the land office, he said. Her hoe stopped mid-stroke. Cutler owns my equipment debt. He's calling it due. $480 by harvest. Nayland set the hoe down. You do not have this money. No. What does he want? Sam pulled the foreclosure notice from his pocket, smoothed it against his thigh. The water rights. To the spring you were digging for. Says the railroad will pay $10,000 for it. She turned to face him fully. And if you refuse? He takes the mule team. I can't prove the land without them. Can't plow the last 4 acres. Land office auctions the homestead to cover the debt. He paused. And he'll have you deported. Says you're a vagrant. Says harboring you breaks federal law. The evening wind picked up, carrying the smell of dust and the distant promise of rain that never came. Somewhere, a crow called, harsh, mocking. Nayland walked to the garden edge, knelt and scooped up a handful of soil. She let it run through her fingers like water. My grandmother told me a story, she said quietly, when I was small, before the soldiers came. She said the earth remembers everything, every seed planted, every drop of blood spilled, every promise made and broken. She looked up at him. The spring beneath your land. It was a birthing place for my people. Women went there to bring children into the world. The water was sacred, life-giving. Naline? And then the fences came, and the water was forgotten, but the earth remembers. She stood, brushed the dirt from her hands. If Cutler takes the water, he takes more than you know. He takes the memory. The circle breaks forever. Sam felt something in his chest tighten. I can't fight him. I don't have money for lawyers. Don't have time. Then we dig. What? We dig tonight. We find the spring. We prove the water is real, that your land has value beyond what he claims. Then we go to Santa Fe. We marry before the judge, make it legal. I become your wife in white law. And white law says a man's wife can testify for him. Sam shook his head. Even if we found the water, Cutler won't care. He's got the paperwork. He's got the power. Does he have the truth? The question hung between them. Sam pulled his hat off, ran a hand through his hair. The sun was almost gone now, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. He thought of Rebecca, buried on the ridge under the old cottonwood. Thought of the years he'd spent alone, nursing his grief like a wound he was afraid to let heal. I can't lose another one, he said, his voice barely audible. Can't watch another woman. He stopped, his throat closing. Nayland took a step closer. Not touching, but near enough he could feel the heat of her in the cooling evening air. I am not her, she said. I am not asking you to love me. I am asking you to fight with me. Sam looked at her, really looked. At the determined set of her jaw, the steadiness in her eyes, the way she stood like she'd already decided the outcome and was just waiting for him to catch up. He thought of the horseshoe, sitting on his kitchen table, where he'd left it that morning. If we do this, he said slowly, if we dig, if we find water, if we go to Santa Fe, you understand what you're signing up for? The town already hates us. Cutler will make it worse, and there's no guarantee it works. I know. And the child. He couldn't finish the sentence. She did it for him. If I carry your child and lose it like the others, you will blame yourself. I know this too. Her hand moved, almost touched his arm, then fell back. But Samuel Bridger, I would rather die trying than live as a ghost. I have been a ghost for 3 years. I am tired of it. The words hit him like a fist to the sternum, because he knew exactly what she meant. He'd been a ghost too, living in this cabin like a man already buried. All right, he said. We dig tonight. Good. But first, he walked to the cabin, came back with the blue cotton fabric Mrs. Webb had sold them. He held it out. You'll need a proper dress. For Santa Fe. For the judge. Nolan took the fabric, unfolded it. The blue was pale as a winter sky, soft as water. She pressed it to her face, breathed in the smell of new cloth. I do not know how to make a white woman's dress, she said. I'll help. Rebecca taught me to sew. After the war, when my hands shook too much to hold a rifle, she said I needed to hold something gentler. A needle worked as well as anything. Nolan looked at him with something that might have been surprise, or respect, or the first fragile thread of trust. Then we make it together, she said. That night, they sat at the kitchen table by lamplight, cutting and pinning fabric. Sam's hands remembered the motions, the way Rebecca used to guide his fingers, patient as the turning of seasons. Nalin watched, learned, her stitches clumsy but determined. Outside, the wind rose. Inside, the lamp burned steady. And between them, something that wasn't quite partnership, and wasn't quite friendship, began to take shape. Rough and uncertain, but real. When the dress was half finished, Sam set down his needle. Tomorrow we go to Santa Fe. Day after we dig, Nellen nodded. But neither of them mentioned the thing they both knew. Cutler's deadline was noon tomorrow. And the mule team was all that stood between them and ruin. The morning came cold and clear, the kind of high desert dawn that promised heat by noon and frost by nightfall. Sam woke before the sun, built up the fire, and found Nellen already dressed in the blue cotton dress they'd finished stitching the night before. She'd braided her hair in the married style, 2 tight plaits wrapped and pinned at the base of her skull. She looked like she was preparing for battle. "We should go," she said, "before the town wakes." They were saddling the horses when they heard it. The sound of hooves on the hardpack road. Not one rider. 6, maybe more. Sam's hand went to his rifle. "Get inside." "No." Nellen, "No." Her voice was iron. "I will not hide anymore." The riders crested the ridge. Cutler in front on a big bay gelding, his bank clerk beside him, and 4 ranch hands Sam recognized from the Miller spread. They reined up in his yard, their horses blowing steam in the cold air. Cutler dismounted, brushed at dust from his coat. "Bridger, glad I caught you before you ran off." Wasn't running, going to Santa Fe, got business with the circuit judge." "I'm sure you do." Cutler's smile was all teeth. "But first, we've got business here. Boys." 2 of the ranch hands dismounted, walked toward the barn. Sam stepped in front of them, rifle raised. "That's far enough." Cutler pulled a paper from his coat. "Writ of seizure signed by Judge Patterson. You defaulted on your loan payment, which was due yesterday, by the way. The mule team is now property of First Territorial Bank." He nodded to the men. "Go ahead." "Like hell." Sam's finger found the trigger. One of the hands, a kid named Tommy, barely 20, stopped, his face pale. But the older one, a grizzled cowboy called Hayes, just spat tobacco and kept walking. "You gonna shoot me over a mule, Bridger? That'll look real good at your homestead hearing." Sam's hands shook. He wanted to. God, he wanted to. Nolan's voice cut through the tension. "Let them take the animals." Sam turned. "What?" She stepped past him, walked right up to Hayes. "Take them. But know this. The man who steals a plow from another man's field steals bread from his children's mouths." "You will sleep poorly," Hayes faltered. Something in her eyes, dark and absolutely certain, made him look away. "Just doing my job, ma'am." "Yes," Nalen said softly. "Men always are." They led Sal and Gideon out of the barn, hitched them to a lead rope. The mules balked, their hooves digging into the earth, but the men pulled them along. Sam watched his only means of finishing the homestead walk away, and felt something in his chest crack. Cutler remounted. "Deadline stands, Bridger. Prove up by April or the land goes to auction. Without your team, I'd say your chances are slim to none." He tipped his hat to Nalen. "Ma'am, pleasure doing business with you." They rode out, dust rising in their wake. Sam stood in the yard, the rifle heavy and useless in his hands. "That was everything. Without the team, I can't—" "We dig by hand," Nellen said. "You can't plow 4 acres by hand." "No, we will find another way." She walked to the spot where she'd been digging that first night, knelt, pressed her palm to the earth. "First we find the water. Water's worth more than mules." They worked all day, Sam with his shovel, Nalene with a sharpened stick she'd made from a cottonwood branch. They didn't go to Santa Fe. There was no point now. Without the mules, the homestead was already lost. But Nalen insisted on the digging, insisted with a quiet ferocity that reminded Sam of a woman in labor, focused on nothing but the push toward life. By noon, they were 5 feet down. By evening, 10. The earth was hard-packed clay and stone, the kind that broke shovels in men's backs. Sam's hands bled, blisters bursting and reforming. Nalen's arms trembled with exhaustion, but she didn't stop. As the sun dropped toward the horizon, Sam climbed out of the hole to rest. His shirt was soaked through, his muscles screaming. He pulled it off, let the cooling air hit his skin. Nalen climbed out after him, sat on the pile of excavated earth. She stared at his chest, at the scars from the war, the dark hair, the way his ribs showed through after months of lean eating. "You are strong," she said, her voice thoughtful. Sam laughed, bitter. "Not strong enough." "No, you are strong enough to dig, to work, to build." She tilted her head, her expression curious, almost innocent. "Is this why white women want babies? They see this strength, and they think, this man can protect, this man can provide." Sam pulled his shirt back on, his face heating. "It's not that simple." Why not?" "Because," he struggled for words, "people don't have children just because a man's got a strong back. It's about family, about love, I suppose." "Love." She said it like she was tasting the word. "What is love?" Sam looked at her, this woman who'd lost 3 babies, who'd been called cursed by her own people, who was digging a hole in his yard with bleeding hands because she refused to give up. Love is this, he said quietly. It's the work. It's digging when you're exhausted. It's choosing to stay when running would be easier. Nalin considered this. Then I think I am learning to love this land. Something in Sam's chest shifted. Yeah, me too. They dug until full dark, until Sam's arms wouldn't lift the shovel anymore. 12 feet down and still dry. They climbed out, filled a bucket from the well, which was running lower, he noticed, and washed the worst of the dirt off their hands and faces. Sam built up the fire, made a thin stew from salt pork and the last of the beans. They ate in silence, too tired for words. Tomorrow, Nalin said, we go deeper. Nalin, I don't think… Tomorrow, she repeated, her voice allowing no argument. Sam nodded. What else could he do? That night, he lay in his cot, staring at the ceiling. He could hear Nalin in the main room. She'd refused the bedroom, choosing instead to sleep on the floor by the fire, like she didn't trust walls yet. He heard her stirring, heard her footsteps. The door to his room creaked open. Samuel? He sat up. What's wrong? She stood in the doorway, backlit by firelight. The blue dress, replaced by the simple doeskin shift she'd been wearing that first night. I need to know, she said, if we are to be married, if I am to carry your child. I need to know what it is, the thing that makes a baby. Sam's mouth went dry. Nalin, we don't have to… I am not asking for it now. She stepped into the room. I am asking you to tell me, so I understand. So when the time comes, I am not afraid. And he looked at her, at the absolute earnestness in her face, the scientific curiosity. She wasn't seducing him. She was asking for knowledge the way a student asks a teacher. And he found himself explaining, haltingly at first, then with more ease. He told her about the body, about the act, about the intimacy of it. He told her it should be gentle, that it should be a choice both people made together. She listened like she was memorizing a map. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. So, she said finally, white people make children this way. She paused. Can I try too? The question hit him like a physical blow. Not because it was forward, but because it was so utterly innocent. A woman asking permission to participate in her own life. Someday, Sam said, his voice rough. When you're ready. When we both are. But not as a transaction. As a choice. She nodded slowly. A choice. Yes, I would like that. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Sam lay back down, his heart hammering. He'd thought he was teaching her, but she'd just taught him something far more important. She wanted a child, not because the tribe demanded it, not because the law required it. She wanted it because it would be hers, her choice, her life. And Sam realized with a clarity that terrified him, he wanted to give her that. Not because of the homestead, not because of Cutler, because she deserved it. 3 days later, the well ran dry. Sam lowered the bucket 18 times and brought up nothing but rope and disappointment. The mules were gone. The water was gone. The proving deadline ticked closer like a death watch. Nalin stood beside him, staring down into the dark hole. You were right, Sam said, about the well failing. Yeah, so we dig. They went back to the hole she'd started that first night. Now 15 feet deep, 20, 25. Sam's shoulders burned. His hands were more callous than skin. Nalin worked beside him, hour after hour, her small frame deceptive in its endurance. On the 4th day of digging, when they were 30 feet down and the sides of the pit had to be shored up with timber to keep them from collapsing, Sam paused. He leaned on his shovel, breathing hard, and looked up at the circle of sky above them. This is insane, he said. Yes. Nalin drove her stick into the clay. But we are already insane. Might as well dig. Sam laughed, a short, desperate sound. You always this stubborn? My grandmother said stubbornness and faith are the same word. Just depends who is speaking. He wiped sweat from his face. What was she like? Your grandmother? Nalin stopped digging. Her face went distant. Strong. Not in body, she was small, like me, but in spirit. When the soldiers came to take us to the reservation, she stood in front of them with nothing but a stick. She said, This is our land. Our mothers are buried here. Our children were born here. You may kill me, but you cannot make me leave. What did they do? They took her anyway, put her in chains, but she never stopped believing the land was hers. Nalin looked down at the earth beneath her feet. She is dying now. In a wooden house the government built. She hates it. Says it smells like dead trees and lies. Sam had no words for that. He just dug. That night, after they'd climbed out and washed and eaten their thin supper, Nalin sat by the fire and pulled something from the small leather pouch she wore at her belt. It was a needle. Not steel, but bone, polished smooth and sharp. What's that for? Sam asked. To finish what we started. She gestured to the blue dress, folded on the bench. It needs embroidery at the collar and cuffs. If I am to stand before a white judge, I should look like a white bride. Sam sat across from her. You don't have to do that. The dress is fine as it is. It is not about fine. It is about respect. She threaded the needle with sinew so fine it was almost invisible. My people embroider our dresses with symbols. Each stitch is a prayer, a hope. I will do the same for this one. What will you stitch? She thought for a moment, then began working the needle through the fabric at the collar. Water, she said, because water is life, and horseshoes. She glanced at the iron shoe he'd hung above the door that morning. Because you said a journey ends here. Sam watched her hands move, precise, deliberate. The firelight caught the sinew, making it glow like golden thread. You know what we're doing is crazy, he said quietly. Even if we find water, even if we marry in Santa Fe. Cutler's got the law on his side. Laws change. Water does not. That's not how the world works. Nayland looked up at him. Then we change the world. The simplicity of it, the absolute conviction, made something in Sam's chest ache. He stood, went to the small trunk at the foot of his cot, and pulled out a battered wooden box. Inside was a ring, plain gold, worn smooth. Rebecca's wedding band. He'd meant to bury it with her. Couldn't bring himself to do it. Had carried it for 6 years like a stone in his pocket. He held it out to Nayland. If we're going to do this right, if we're going before a judge, you should have this. She stared at the ring. This was hers. Yes. I cannot take it. She'd want you to have it. The words surprised him, but they were true. Rebecca had been many things, stubborn, fierce, kind to a fault. She would have liked Nayland, would have seen the same steel in her that she'd carried herself. Nayland set down her sewing. She reached out, touched the ring with one finger, then looked at him. If I wear this, I am not trying to be her. I know. I am still me. Apache. Different. I know that too. She took the ring, slid it onto her right hand. Not her left, not yet. When we marry before the judge, I will move it, but until then, I wear it here. To remember she came first. To remember I am second, but still chosen. Sam's throat tightened. You're not second. Then what am I? He didn't have an answer. Or maybe he did, but couldn't say it yet. So, instead he reached out and took her hand, the one with Rebecca's ring on it, and squeezed it once, gentle. You're Nayland, he said. That's enough. She looked at their joined hands for a long moment, then nodded. They sat like that, until the fire burned low, her embroidering the dress with prayers for water, him watching the needle move, and thinking about the woman buried on the ridge, and the woman sitting across from him, and how maybe, just maybe, a man's heart was big enough to hold both grief and hope at the same time. When Nayland finally went to sleep, Sam stepped outside. The night was cold and clear, stars scattered across the sky like salt spilled on black cloth. He looked at the hole they'd been digging. 30 feet down, and still dry. We're going to need a miracle, he whispered to the darkness. The darkness didn't answer, but somewhere in the distance he heard it, faint as a memory, steady as a heartbeat, the sound of water moving underground. Sunday morning, the church bells rang across Broken Ridge. Sam stood in his yard, hat in his hands, watching the town gather for worship. He'd gone to that church once, right after Rebecca died. Sat in the back pew and listened to Reverend Henley talk about God's mercy and divine will. He'd never gone back. Nayland emerged from the cabin wearing the blue dress, the embroidery at collar and cuffs catching the morning light, tiny symbols of water and protection stitched in white thread. She'd pinned her hair in the married style, and Rebecca's ring sat on her right hand, waiting. We should go, she said. To church? Yes. Sam stared at her. They'll spit on us. Maybe. But if we hide, we are guilty. If we stand before them, we are only married. She adjusted the shawl around her shoulders. Besides, you said a judge would ask if we live as man and wife. A man and wife go to church together. Yes? She was right. He hated that she was right. They rode into town together, Sam on his remaining saddle horse, Nayland on the old plow mare he'd kept in the back pasture. The streets were empty, everyone already inside the white clapboard church at the end of Main Street. They tied the horses and walked up the steps. Sam pulled open the door, every head turned. The church went silent, the kind of silence that has weight, that presses on your chest like a hand. Reverend Henley stood at the pulpit, his Bible open, his mouth frozen mid-sentence. Sam took Nayland's arm and walked down the center aisle. Their footsteps echoed on the wooden floor. He could feel eyes burning into his back, could hear the whispers starting like wind through dry grass. They slid into a pew near the back. Nayland folded her hands in her lap, her spine straight, her eyes forward. Reverend Henley found his voice. Mr. Bridger, I don't believe your companion is welcome in this house of God. Sam stood. She's my wife, Reverend. And last I checked, God's house was open to all who seek him. Marriage requires a union blessed by the church. We'll be married by a circuit judge in Santa Fe. That's legal enough for the territory. Figured it should be good enough for God. Martha Henley rose from her seat in the front row. This is an abomination. She's a heathen, a savage. You can't just... Mrs. Webb stood. Her voice cut through Martha's like a knife through butter. Sit down, Martha. Excuse me? I said sit. Mrs. Webb turned to face the congregation. I've been quiet long enough. We all have. She looked at Sam and Nolan. These two came here asking nothing but to be left alone. And what did we do? We called them sinners. We took their livelihood. We treated them like criminals for daring to care for each other. Beatrice, the Reverend started. Horace Cutler has been bleeding this town dry for 5 years, Mrs. Webb continued, her voice rising. Charging illegal interest, foreclosing on widows and orphans. And when one man finally stands up to him, when one man tries to build something good, we help Cutler destroy on him. She pulled a leather-bound ledger from her bag. I have records, dates, numbers. Proof that Cutler's been violating territorial banking laws for half a decade. The church erupted in whispers. Cutler himself rose from a middle pew, his face red. That's slander, Beatrice. You'll answer for this in court. Good. I look forward to it. On that, she held the ledger high. I've already sent a copy to the territorial governor's office, along with a letter detailing how you've been selling water rights you don't own to the Union Pacific Railroad. Sam's head snapped toward her. What? Mrs. Webb looked at him. That spring you've been digging for? It's not on your land. It's underneath it, fed by an aquifer that runs through 6 properties, including yours. Cutler's been selling futures on water he has no legal claim to. He needs you gone so he can claim the land defaulted and take ownership himself. Cutler's face went from red to white. You have no proof of that. I have a telegram from a Union Pacific land agent. Found it in your trash last month when I was sweeping your office. She smiled, sharp as broken glass. You really should burn your correspondence, Horace. The church exploded, men shouting, women gasping, Reverend Henley hammering his Bible on the pulpit, calling for order. In the chaos, Sam felt Nalen's hand find his. Her fingers were cool and steady. She is a good ally, Nalen whispered. Yes, she is. Cutler shoved his way out of the pew, stormed toward the door, but Sam stepped into the aisle, blocking him. You took my mules, Sam said quietly. You tried to take my land. You threatened my wife. He leaned in close. I'm going to dig up that spring. I'm going to prove my homestead. And when I do, I'm going to make sure every drop of that water flows free. You won't see a dime. Cutler's eyes were poison. You're dead, Bridger. Bridger, you just don't know it yet. Maybe, but I'll die with clean hands. Cutler left, the door slamming behind him. Sam turned back to the congregation. Half of them looked ashamed. The other half looked angry. But a few, Mrs. Webb, old Doc Moss in the back, a handful of ranch hands who'd worked with Sam over the years, looked something like hopeful. We'll be leaving now, Sam said. We've got a well to dig. He and Nalen walked back up the aisle, their footsteps the only sound in the silent church. Outside, Doc Moss was waiting on the steps. He was a lean man, gray-bearded, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much suffering to judge anyone. Bridger, he said. Heard you lost your mule team. Yes, sir. Doc pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. I've been carrying this around for 3 years. Never had the guts to use it. Figure you need it more than I do. Sam unfolded the paper. It was a promissory note, a debt Cutler held on Doc's medical practice. $200. I don't understand, Sam said. You pulled me out of the Rio Grande in '71. I was drunk, stupid, ready to die. You dove in, nearly drowned yourself getting me to shore. Doc pressed the note into Sam's hand. I owe you my life. Figure that's worth more than $200. Give this to Mrs. Webb. Let her add it to her collection. It's more ammunition against Cutler. Sam's throat went tight. Doc, I can't. You can. You will. Doc looked at Nalen. Ma'am, if you need a physician when your time comes, you send for me. Don't care what the town says. I'll be there. Nalen's eyes widened. You know? I'm a doctor. I can see the signs. He smiled. Congratulations, both of you. He tipped his hat and walked back toward his office. Sam looked at Nolan. You're pregnant? She touched her stomach, her expression uncertain. I think so. It is early. I was not sure, did not want to say until I knew. The world tilted. Sam had to sit down on the church steps, his legs suddenly weak. A baby. Another baby. The memory of Rebecca's pale face crashed over him, the tiny silent bundle in his arms, the grave he'd dug with his own hands. Samuel? Nelline's voice was small. Are you angry? No. He couldn't finish. He was terrified. He was hopeful. He was drowning in the past and reaching for the future all at once. Nalin sat beside him, took his hand. We will dig together, we will find the water, and when the baby comes, we will be ready. Sam looked at her. This woman who'd lost 3 children and was still brave enough to try again. This woman who believed in water beneath stone and hope beneath grief. Yeah, he whispered. We will. But as they rode home, Sam saw the dust rising on the eastern road. Riders, coming fast. And he knew with a cold certainty Cutler wasn't done yet. Sam woke before dawn, his heart hammering. He'd dreamed of Rebecca again. Not the peaceful dreams of early grief, but the nightmare that had haunted him for 6 years. Her screams, the blood, the midwife's face going pale as she shook her head, the terrible silence after. He sat up, sweat-soaked, his hands shaking. In the main room, Nalin was already awake, sitting by the fire. She'd been sick that morning. He'd heard her retching behind the cabin at first light. Morning sickness, the beginning. You should rest, Sam said, pulling on his boots. I am fine. You're pregnant. You should... I am pregnant, not broken. She stood, tied her hair back. We dig today. The water's close. I can feel it. Sam looked at her, at the slight swell of her belly that wasn't quite visible yet, at the determined set of her jaw, and felt the old terror rising like floodwater. Nayland, stop. She turned. Just stop. For 1 minute. He ran his hands through his hair, paced to the window, and back. You're pregnant. We don't have mules. We don't have money. Cutler's coming for us. And you want to dig a hole in the ground. Yes. That's insane. You have said this before. Because it's true. His voice rose louder than he meant. You're going to kill yourself. Or the baby. Or both. And I can't... His voice cracked. I can't watch that again. Nalin went very still. Tell me. Tell you what? About her. About your wife. About the baby that died. Sam's chest tightened. No. You carry her like a stone. It is breaking you. Nalin stepped closer. Tell me. The words came out like shrapnel. I couldn't afford a doctor. We were 3 days from town. I delivered the baby myself. I did everything the midwife taught me, but it wasn't enough. The cord was around her neck. Rebecca bled too much. I couldn't stop it. Couldn't save either of them. He slammed his fist against the wall. I failed. I killed them both. You did not kill them. I didn't save them. You are not God. Nalen's voice was sharp. You are a man. A man cannot stop death when it comes. You can only stand beside life and hope. Hope? Sam laughed bitterly. Hope is what kills you. No, fear kills you. And she pressed her hand to her belly. I have buried 3 babies. 3 times, I felt life inside me and then felt it stop. Do you know what that is? To carry death inside your own body? To birth silence? Sam's throat closed. The first time, I thought it was my fault. The second time, I knew I was cursed. The third time, I stopped believing in anything. She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much darkness. But then I met you, and you are more afraid than I am. You are so afraid you have been dead for 6 years. The accusation hit like a fist. That's not... It is true. You did not bury your wife. You buried yourself with her. Nalin's hand found his arm. But I am not her. This baby is not that baby. And you are not the same man you were 6 years ago. How do you know? Because a dead man does not dig wells. A dead man does not fight for land. A dead man does not teach a woman to read by firelight and pretend he does not care. Her grip tightened. You are alive, Samuel Bridger. You are just too afraid to feel it. Sam turned away, his vision blurring. What if you die? Then I die fighting, not hiding. What if the baby? Then we will grieve together. But we will not stop living before we start. She moved to stand in front of him, forced him to look at her. You cannot protect me from death. You can only choose to stand beside me in life. The words broke something open in him, some dam he'd been holding for 6 years. The tears came hot and fast, and he couldn't stop them. He sank into the chair, his face in his hands, and wept. For Rebecca. For the daughter he'd never named. For the man he'd been before loss carved him hollow. Nayland knelt beside him, her small hand on his back. She didn't speak, just stayed there, steady as stone, while he shattered. When the storm passed, Sam looked at her through swollen eyes. I'm scared. I know. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. So we learn together. She stood, pulled him to his feet. Come, the water is waiting. They went to the pit, 40 feet deep now, the sides reinforced with timber. Sam climbed down first, then helped Nayland. They dug in silence, the rhythm of shovel and stick, breath and effort. An hour passed. 2. The sun climbed higher, turning the pit into an oven. Then Sam's shovel hit something different. Not rock, not clay, something that gave, that yielded like skin. "Wait," he said. Nayland stopped, listened. Beneath them, faint as a whisper, was the sound Sam had heard that night on the porch. Water, moving, alive. He dropped to his knees, scraped away the clay with his bare hands. The earth was damp, then wet. Then water began to seep through, cold, clear, unstoppable. Nellen made a sound, not quite a cry, not quite a prayer. She knelt beside him, her hands in the water, her face transformed. "To," she whispered, the Apache word for water. "Tobika." What does that mean? Water's blessing. Sam cupped his hands, brought the water to his lips. It was the coldest, sweetest thing he'd ever tasted. He looked at Nalin, saw tears streaming down her face, not from sadness, but from something bigger, relief, hope, victory. "We found it," he said. "Yes." She pressed her hand to her belly, then reached for his hand, placed it there too. Beneath his palm, barely perceptible, was the faintest flutter, life, still fighting. "We found it," she said, "and we will keep fighting." Above them, the circle of sky was impossibly blue. The water rose around their knees, filling the bottom of the pit. Sam pulled Nayland to her feet, held her close. For the first time in 6 years, the weight on his chest lifted. Not gone, never gone, but bearable. "We need to report this to the land office," he said. "Prove the water exists, then get you to Doc Moss. Make sure you're—" The sound of horses cut him off. Not one, many. Nalin looked up toward the surface. "They are here." Sam's jaw tightened. "Cutler." "Yes." They climbed out of the pit, muddy and soaked. 6 riders stood in the yard. Cutler in front, his clerk beside him, 4 men Sam didn't recognize, hired guns from their look, hard-eyed and heavily armed. Cutler smiled. "Bridger, heard you struck water. Congratulations. Unfortunately, you're standing on my land." Sam's hand moved toward his rifle, leaning against the cabin wall. "I wouldn't," Cutler said. One of the gunmen raised a Winchester, aimed it at Sam's chest. "This is my homestead," Sam said. "Legal and registered." "Was your homestead. As of noon today, your foreclosure is final." "The land's been auctioned. I bought it. Every inch." He pulled a document from his coat. Federal writ of possession, signed by Judge Patterson himself. Nayland stepped forward. "You cannot—" "Ma'am, I can, and I have." Cutler's smile widened. "You've got until sundown to clear out. Anything left behind becomes my property, including that water you just found." Sam felt the world narrowing to a single point. Cutler's smug face. "Over my dead body," he said. The gunman's rifle didn't waver. And in that moment, Sam knew. This wasn't over. It had just begun. Sam's hand was halfway to his rifle when Doc Moss's voice rang out from the road. "Hold on now. Nobody's shooting anybody." The old physician rode up on his bay mare, Mrs. Webb beside him on a small buckboard. Behind them came 3 more riders. Ranch hands Sam recognized from neighboring spreads, men who'd worked with him during roundups. Cutler's smile faltered. "This is a private matter, Doc." No, it's not." Mrs. Webb climbed down from the buckboard, her arms full of papers. "It's a federal matter. And I've sent word to the Territorial Land Commissioner in Santa Fe. He's riding out today to review your foreclosure." "My foreclosure is legal." Is it?" She pulled out a document, held it up. "Because, according to territorial banking law, any loan with interest exceeding 15% is void, null, and unenforceable." She looked at Cutler with icy satisfaction. "You charged 40%, which means your foreclosure is fraudulent." One of the gunmen shifted in his saddle. Another lowered his rifle slightly. Cutler's face went red. "That's a civil matter for the courts. And here's another problem." Doc Moss dismounted, pulled out his own papers. Homestead Act of 1862. Section 4. Any married homesteader whose spouse can prove residency and labor contribution has automatic extension rights if proving deadline is contested. He handed the papers to Sam. "I documented Nayland's work here. Fence repair, well digging, garden cultivation. She's been living here 6 weeks. That qualifies?" "She's not legal." Cutler's voice rose to a shout. "She's a vagrant Indian. She can't claim homestead rights." "Actually," Mrs. Webb said quietly, "she can." She pulled out one more document, this one yellowed with age, official seals cracked, but still visible. Treaty of 1871, Article 7, subsection B, she began to read. "Any member of a federally recognized tribe who enters into legal marriage with a United States citizen shall be entitled to all rights and privileges of citizenship, including but not limited to property ownership and homestead claims." She looked at Cutler. "Nalin is Apache. The Apache are federally recognized, And she's married to Sam, or will be, as soon as the circuit judge arrives tomorrow. Oh, tomorrow? Sam stared at her. Mrs. Webb smiled. I sent a telegram. Judge Morrison is coming to Broken Ridge, specifically to hear this case. He'll marry you two proper, then rule on the homestead claim. All legal, all federal. Cutler's horse danced sideways, sensing its rider's fury. This is obstruction. No, Horace. This is justice. Mrs. Webb's voice went cold. You've been stealing from this town for 5 years, charging illegal interest, foreclosing on widows, selling water rights you don't own. I've got ledgers full of your crimes. And tomorrow, when the federal land commissioner and Judge Morrison arrive, I'm handing over every page. One of the gunmen cleared his throat. Mr. Cutler, if this is a federal matter, I ain't getting involved. He turned his horse. The others followed. Cutler sat alone on his bay, his face white with rage. You think this is over? You think a judge will side with you? With her? He pointed at Nalin. She's a savage. A squaw. No court in the territory will... I will speak for myself. Nalin's voice cut through the yard like a blade. She stepped forward, her chin high, her hands folded in front of her. The blue dress was muddy, her hair coming loose from its pins, but she stood like a queen. My name is Nalin, she said clearly. I am Apache. Chiricahua Band. My grandmother was born on this land before your fences came. Before your laws told us we were vagrant for living where our mothers lived and our children were born. Cutler sneered. I'm not interested in... You will listen. Her voice didn't rise, but it commanded. You say I am not legal, but your law, the 1871 treaty, says I am a citizen when I marry a white man. Your law says I can own property. Your law says this land can be mine. She turned to Sam, held out her hand, and I choose this man, not because I need him, because I want him. Sam took her hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was iron. Nalin looked back at Cutler. You want this land for water, for money. You see earth and see only dollars. She pressed her free hand to her belly. I see earth and see life. I see the place where my child will be born, and I will not let you take it. Doc Moss stepped forward. For the record, I've examined Mrs. Bridger. She's approximately 8 weeks pregnant. Healthy, expected delivery in late spring. He looked at Cutler. That makes her a married, pregnant homesteader with full legal standing. You want to evict her? You're going to have to explain to a federal judge why you're throwing an expectant mother off her land. The silence in the yard was absolute. Cutler's hands shook on his reins. This isn't over. Yeah, Sam said quietly. It is. Cutler jerked his horse around and rode off, dust rising in his wake. The moment he was gone, Sam's legs nearly gave out. He sat heavily on the porch steps, his head in his hands. Mrs. Webb sat beside him. You all right, Mr. Bridger? I don't know what just happened. You won, or you're about to. She patted his shoulder. Judge Morrison is a fair man. He'll see the truth. And the land commissioner, he's been looking for an excuse to investigate Cutler for months. This gives him one. Doc Moss knelt in front of Nalin. May I? She nodded. He checked her pulse, looked at her eyes, pressed gently on her abdomen. You're dehydrated, and you've been working too hard. I want you resting. No more digging. The water's found, Nalin said. The digging is done. Good. He stood. I'll be back tomorrow for the hearing. And when your time comes, you send for me. I don't care if it's midnight in a blizzard. I'll be there. Why? Nalin asked. Why do you help us? Doc looked at Sam. Because 6 years ago, I was drowning, and this man jumped into a river to save me. Didn't ask if I deserved it. Didn't ask what I could pay. Just pulled me out. He tipped his hat. Figured it was time I returned the favor. He and Mrs. Webb left, the ranch hands following. Sam and Nalin stood alone in the yard, the sun dropping toward the mesas, the sound of water trickling from the pit behind them. We did it, Sam said, his voice hollow with disbelief. We actually... Nalin turned to him. Samuel. Yeah? The treaty, the one Mrs. Webb read, it says, I am a citizen when I marry a white man. She pulled Rebecca's ring from her right hand, held it out. So marry me, tomorrow, before the judge. Make it real. Sam took the ring. It was warm from her skin. It's already real, he said. Then make it legal. And he looked at her, at this woman who'd dug 40 feet into the earth with bleeding hands, who'd stood up to Cutler without flinching, who was carrying his child and still had the courage to ask for what she wanted. He slid the ring onto her left hand. It fit perfectly. Tomorrow, he said as white in front of the judge. In front of the whole damn town, if they want to watch. He pulled her close, pressed his forehead to hers. I'll marry you proper, make you my wife in every law that matters. She smiled, the first real unguarded smile he'd seen on her face. Good. That night, They sat by the spring. Water pooled at the bottom of the pit, clear and cold and endless. Sam had rigged a bucket and rope, started filling barrels. Nolan leaned against him, her hand resting on her belly. "What will we name the baby?" she asked. Sam's breath caught. He hadn't let himself think that far, hadn't dared to hope. "I don't know. What do your people do?" "We wait. We see the child, then we know the name." She tilted her head. "But white people choose before, yes?" "Sometimes." "Then we do both. We choose a white name and an Apache name. The child will carry both worlds." Sam kissed the top of her head. "Yeah, both worlds." Above them, stars began to appear, thousands of them, scattered across the sky like seeds. And for the first time in 6 years, Sam let himself imagine a future, a child, a family, a life that was more than survival. Tomorrow, the judge would come. Tomorrow, Cutler would make his last stand. Tomorrow, the fight would reach its end. But tonight, there was water, there was hope, there was Nolan's hand in his, and that was enough. Judge Morrison arrived at noon, a thin man with wire spectacles and a face like weathered leather. Behind him came the federal land commissioner, a younger man named Hartley, carrying ledgers and surveying equipment. Half the town gathered in the yard, some curious, some hostile, all watching. Cutler stood by his horse, his lawyer beside him, a slick man from Santa Fe with papers stacked in his arms. The judge set up a makeshift court on Sam's porch, his law books spread on a crate. "Let's make this quick. I've got 3 more cases in Alamogordo by week's end." Cutler's lawyer spoke first, reading from his documents. "Your Honor, this foreclosure is legal under territorial banking law. Mr. Bridger defaulted on a promissory note. The land has been legally auctioned and purchased by my client, Mr. Cutler, who holds clear title." Except Mrs. Webb interrupted, stepping forward. "The promissory note was issued with illegal interest rates. 40%, Your Honor. The legal limit is 15. The judge's eyebrows rose. "You have proof?" She handed him her ledger. He flipped through it, his frown deepening. "Mr. Cutler, you want to explain this?" Cutler's face went red. "Those rates were negotiated in good faith. Good faith doesn't make usury legal." Judge Morrison closed the ledger. "The foreclosure is void. The debt is void. Mr. Bridger's homestead claim stands." He looked at Sam. "Assuming you can prove you've met the requirements." "Have you?" Sam stood. "Yes, sir. I've plowed 10 acres, built a permanent dwelling, maintained continuous residence for 5 years, and I've struck water, a spring that'll support cultivation year-round." Commissioner Hartley walked to the pit, peered down, then turned back nodding. "Water's confirmed. Good flow. This qualifies as a viable agricultural claim." Cutler's lawyer tried again. "Your Honor, the marriage is fraudulent. Mr. Bridger married a vagrant Indian, specifically to extend his proving deadline under the Homestead Act. That's conspiracy to defraud." "Is that true, Mr. Bridger?" the judge asked. Sam looked at Nolan, standing beside him in her blue dress with the embroidered collar. He thought about lying, about saying it was love at first sight, romance under the stars. But that would dishonor what they'd actually built. "We married for practical reasons, Your Honor," Sam said. "I needed help to prove the land. She needed legal protection and a chance to have a family. It was a business arrangement." Cutler smiled triumphantly. "But," Sam continued, his voice steady, "somewhere in the work, in the digging and the hoping and the fighting, it stopped being business. It became a partnership, then it became more." He took Nalen's hand. "I love this woman. Not because I have to, because I choose to." The judge studied them over his spectacles. "Mrs. Bridger, is this true?" Nalen stepped forward. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket, the marriage certificate they'd gotten in Santa Fe yesterday, signed by a justice of the peace. "This paper says I am his wife under white law," she said, her English clear and precise. "But paper does not make a marriage. Work makes a marriage. Choosing each other when you do not have to, that makes a marriage." She looked at Sam. "He could have sent me away when the town turned against us. When Cutler came with guns, he could have saved himself. Instead, he dug a well with his hands until they bled, for me, for our child. That is not fraud, Your Honor. That is love." The yard went silent. Judge Morrison removed his spectacles, cleaned them, put them back on. "Mr. Cutler, I'm denying your claim. The homestead belongs to Samuel and Nalen Bridger. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full investigation into your banking practices. If Commissioner Hartley finds evidence of systematic fraud, you'll be facing criminal charges. And this is outrageous. And one more thing." The judge's voice went cold. "I'm issuing a restraining order. You come within 100 yards of this property, I'll have the territorial marshal arrest you for harassment." He banged his gavel on the crate. "Case dismissed." Cutler's face went white, then purple. He looked at Sam with pure hatred. "This isn't over." "Yeah," Sam said quietly. "It is." Cutler mounted his horse and rode off, his lawyer scrambling to follow. The crowd began to disperse, some muttering, some looking ashamed, a few nodding with quiet approval. Sizzes. Webb approached the porch. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Bridger." "Thank you," Sam said, "for everything. We couldn't have—" "You saved my husband from Cutler's loans once, long time ago. You probably don't remember, but I do." She pressed a small package into Nolan's hands. "For the baby, when it comes." Inside was soft white cotton, already cut and hemmed for infant clothes. Nalen's eyes filled. "Thank you." Doc Moss was next. "I'll check on you next week, Mrs. Bridger. Make sure everything's progressing well." One by one, people approached. Not everyone. Not most. But enough. The blacksmith, a few ranch hands, the schoolteacher, who whispered that she'd love to teach Nellen to read more if she wanted. By evening, the yard was empty except for Sam and Nalen. They walked to the spring, now pooling clear and steady at the bottom of the pit. Sam had built a stone rim around it, started digging channels to irrigate the fields. Nellen knelt at the edge, cupped water in her hands, drank. "Tobika," she whispered again, water's blessing. Sam sat beside her. "We did it." "Yes. I don't know what happens now. Now we plant." She gestured to the plowed fields. "Now we build. Now we wait for the baby." 6 months later, on a cool April morning with rain clouds gathering over the mesas, Nalen went into labor. Doc Moss arrived within the hour, Mrs. Webb with him carrying clean linens and hot water. Sam held Nolan's hand through every contraction, whispering the Apache lullabies she'd taught him, telling her she was strong, telling her she could do this. The labor was long, 16 hours. Sam's fear threatened to drown him 100 times, but Nolan wouldn't let it. Every time his hands shook, she'd grip tighter and say, "Stay with me." And he did. Just after dawn, when the first light touched the eastern ridge, the baby came. A boy. Small, but perfect, with a full head of black hair and lungs that worked just fine. Doc Moss cut the cord, cleaned the baby, and placed him in Nolan's arms. She wept. Sam wept. The baby opened his eyes, pale gray like Sam's, and looked at the world with ancient wisdom. "River," Sam whispered, stroking the baby's cheek. "We'll call him River." "To Yaji," Nolan added. "Little water." "River To Yaji Bridger," Sam said, trying the full name. 2 worlds, 1 child. Nalen smiled, exhausted and radiant. "Yes, both worlds, both strong." Doc Moss packed his bag. "He's healthy. She's a healthy. You did good, Bridger." "We did good," Sam corrected, looking at Nalen. After Doc and Mrs. Webb left, Sam carried his wife and son outside. The rain had started. Soft, steady, the first real rain in 8 months. It fell on the garden, on the fields, on the spring that bubbled clear and cold from the earth. Sam stood in his yard, holding his family, watching the rain bless the land he'd fought for. The horseshoe still hung above the door, the spring still flowed, and the child in his arms breathed steady and strong. "Journey ends here," Sam said quietly. Nolan looked up at him, rain on her face. "No, journey begins here." And she was right. Now, I ain't saying the town forgot what they'd done, turned their backs when a man and woman needed mercy most. But folks got short memories when the well runs deep and free. Sam Bridger opened that spring to anyone who asked, didn't charge a penny, shared the water like his wife taught him, the circle, she called it. What you take, you give back. Cutler left Broken Ridge that summer, federal charges pending. Last I heard, he was working as a clerk in Tucson, broken and bitter. But Sam and Nalen, they stayed, built a life on that 160 acres. Had 2 more children after River. The garden Rebecca couldn't grow came back under Nalen's hands, fed half the county during the lean years. River To Yaji grew up speaking 2 languages, honoring 2 worlds. Some folks never did understand it, but the land didn't care about understanding. It just cared about the work. I learned 3 things from their story. First, the law's a tool, can build a home or burn it down, depending whose hands hold it. Second, choosing someone when you don't have to, that's the only kind of love that lasts. Third, water doesn't care about the color of the hands that dig for it, it just flows. And by God's grace and a woman's grit, the dust won't settle where love's been planted deep.